Hello everyone, Miss Nancy's back, and I have got some really good young adult books to share with you. They're all fiction, and so let's dive right in. It's going to be quick and dirty because I want you to get reading. The first one I have is called The Impostor Queen by Sarah Fine. Now this queen genre, where the main character is a queen or going to become a queen, has exploded recently in YA. And Sarah Fine's story is kind of a paranormal fantasy built around a people living on a peninsula who is ruled by a queen, and then there's a temple, and there's elders, and there's priests, and there's acolytes, and the whole ball of wax. And they all have a power, and their power is derived from copper that is mined out of the land. And it is manifested through this magic where they keep a balance of fire and ice in their bodies. So the queen in ruling can keep winters away with her fire part, so they're nice and even temperatured, and then she can keep summers nice and cool and perfect for growing crops with her ice part, and everything is just perfect. She can repel enemies with the flick of her wrist and her mind, which is really cool. And there is in these people, this tribe, there is always a young girl who's chosen as a young girl to be the next queen. And then once she's chosen, she is taken to the temple and isolated for the rest of her life until she's ready to be queen. But things are not going so well in the Shangri-La when we start with this story, because the queens are dying at younger and younger ages, and the copper is running out, and the barbarians are at the gate. And because the people have gotten so lazy with the queen taking care of everything for them, they have no idea how to defend themselves. So when we see them, we see Ellie, who is slated to be the next queen. So she's been in isolation for a long time, taught a certain way, taught certain ideas, and she discovers a fact about herself that will make it impossible for her to be queen. And this begins a quest for her to discover the truth. We end up outside this world in the Outlands, where there are people who are barely surviving, but people who actually have this magic, and we wonder, why are they out here? Why aren't they inside? And so we have to learn about all of that, and we have to learn the story about what is really going on in this world. I loved the action in this tale, and the magical elements here were just amazing. Fine built a world that I could understand very easily. I could picture it in my mind. And there's a romance where the attraction is this really interesting push-pull thing, where the magical powers of fire and ice create some danger between the people who are attracted to each other. So I love that. I could not wait to get back to this story every time I had to put it down. And I think teens will like this for its paranormal elements and its action and the romance that's in there. So try The Impostor Queen by Sarah Fine. My next one is by a very well-known YA author, Kelly Armstrong, and I had never read her before because most of her series on ghosts and paranormal stuff just didn't fit what I like to read. But this one was right in my wheelhouse. It's a psychological thriller. It's called The Mast Truth. And we start out with Riley, who's a girl, and she's been a victim of trauma. When she was beginning a babysitting job several years before, she witnessed a double murder. And so now she has PTSD as a result, and she goes to therapy. And then we meet Max, who's a young teen who has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And we know that that's a difficult disease. It's a lifetime of struggle and sadness. Max is trying to deny it. Max is trying to bury it. Max is trying to keep it from everybody, including himself. And they have both been invited to a group therapy weekend that ends up in a very remote place in kind of an industrial warehouse, which is really weird to begin with. So right off the bat, this weekend turns into a hostage situation, and Riley and Max end up having to shift into their survival modes, and you begin to wonder, well, if they survive this thing, will they be able to function once they come out? So that's a big question. They're burdened by all their baggage, and then they have this thrust upon them. The action is fairly constant in this story. It just keeps going and going and going. And it's mostly told from Riley's perspective. A few chapters are from Max, but most of it is from Riley's perspective. There's a lot of plot twists, a lot of unexpected happenings, and there is a nice romantic connection that happens between Riley and Max that figures very importantly later in the story. I felt for both of these characters. I really ached for them because of all the burdens they were carrying, and I found that Armstrong's writing just fit very well in this psychological thriller genre, and I think teens that read this will find out why adults love psychological thrillers so much. So try The Mast Truth by Kelly Armstrong. My next book is an interesting one. It's one I never expected to pick up, but I did. It's called My Secret to Tell, and I thought that sounded like chick lit, but it wasn't. It turned out to be a nice cat and mouse mystery thriller with loads of red herring characters that fit into the plot of a story, and I kind of like that. It's by Natalie Richards, and the main character is Emmy, and she has borderline OCD, so she pretty much likes to keep her world very orderly, and she always goes out of her way to try to fix everything and everyone. The love of her life is Deacon. He is the son of a charter fishing boat owner in North Carolina, and his sister Chelsea is Emmy's best friend. So her whole world falls apart when Deacon's father is brutally assaulted, and Deacon is the prime suspect. So in the midst of trying to figure out what happened, Chelsea rejects her, and we don't know why. So Emmy embarks on a mission to find out what the truth is and to save the world. As you weave through the story, you are going to have to consider just about every character as a suspect and try to figure out if that's the real one, including Deacon. And the mystery deepens when Richards gives you a side story that perhaps the town sheriff is involved in some kind of conspiracy theory that led to this assault. Trust for everybody in the town goes out the window. Nobody trusts anybody. I liked the relationship between Emmy and Deacon and all the twists and turns of the plot, and I guessed the ending only because I've read so many books in this genre, but I think teens who have not really read this type of a story might not guess, and it'll keep you guessing. So teens are going to like the action, they're going to like the characters, and they're going to like the story itself. So My Secret to Tell by Natalie Richards. My next book is a very sobering book. Its cover is very sobering. It's a piece of paper with erasers, that you'll see the erasers on the spine, and eraser bits all over, and the paper is torn, and it's called The Fall by James Preller. This is a book about cyberbullying. So there's a girl named Morgan who has committed suicide because of all the cyberbullying that took place on her Facebook, Instagram, Twitter pages. And Sam, the main character, is just racked with guilt over this. He believes that he didn't do enough to stop it, and he actually maybe participated a little bit in it. So he starts to write a journal to begin to work through his feelings about this, and then he starts to question some things. He starts to question, did Morgan jump, or was she pushed? Was his participation in this online trolling bullying the thing that led her over the edge? Was he a friend, or was he not? Was he one of the bullies, or was he just a typical peer-pressured teen? He has got to answer all of those questions for himself, and the journal takes him on a journey to do that. But he finds that things aren't always what they look like on the surface, and he has to work through that too, because he knows he needs to make amends. I found the writing of this book very well done. At the beginning, Sam is very snarky, very appropriately snarky, as he's trying to deny all this. And then as he works through his journal, he gets more and more serious, more and more sober. And it's very true to a teen boy. It's a very short book. You can read it in a few hours, but the impact is not short. It's a very serious subject, and I still think about the characters in this book. It's a tough read at times. You're going to have to decide if you feel sorry for Queen Bee Athena, and if she learned her lesson. And at the end of the book, I decided that I didn't feel sorry for her, and I didn't think she learned her lesson, but you may feel differently. And I really hope that kids that pick this up and read it will see the horrible consequences of cyberbullying, and will think not once, not twice, but 3 times before they post something on somebody's wall. So try The Fall by James Preller. Okay, my final book is my favorite book of the whole bunch. I just love this book. I fell in love with it. It's called A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallero. And it's about Sherlock Holmes. Now, Sherlock Holmes has enjoyed this big resurgence in popularity lately because of the Robert Downey Jr. films and the TV series Elementary and more. And Cavallero herself says she's a total fangirl about Sherlock Holmes, and they call themselves Sherlockians. I had no idea that there was this whole world of Sherlockians that are like devoted fans of Sherlock Holmes. So this book is such a reverent bow to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories and characters that it blew me away. Even the title is a play on Conan Doyle's first Sherlock Holmes story, which was called A Study in Scarlet. So what we have here is we have Sherlock Holmes's great-great-great-granddaughter, Charlotte Holmes, and John Watson's great-great-great-grandson, Jamie Watson, meeting at an exclusive prep school in Connecticut. They've both been sent there because they're not doing very well in England. And Charlotte is just like Sherlock. She is like Sherlock reincarnated. She's got all of the brains. She's got all of her ancestors' quirks. She's got all of his logical explanations about everything, and she's even got his drug addiction. Only this time it's updated to oxycodone. Jamie is just like John Watson. He's a character who is very empathetic. He's a writer, and he gets abused through all these escapades much more than he deserves. So just like in the original stories, there are multiple suspects for something that's happened. And in this story, Charlotte and Jamie are framed for 2 murders, and they have to begin this big journey to solve the crime and solve who actually did it. So we've got multiple suspects here. We've got a lot of red herrings. We've got Charlotte spewing out logical explanations about why this has to be one way or why it's not the way you think it is. And they are working together to solve this mystery, and it keeps them guessing and it keeps us guessing. I could not figure it out. The villain, who's actually the real murderer, he even recreates several of Conan Doyle's original stories that involved Sherlock Holmes, which I just loved. And of course, Charlotte would point it out very quickly. Cavallero's writing was just exquisite. It was very much like Conan Doyle's writing. And so it fit perfectly with the story, with the mood, with the characters, and I really hope I see more of these two, Charlotte and Jamie, in the future. So try a study in Charlotte, sit back and enjoy a very wonderful ride. And that's all I have for you today, because we are getting rid of your summer reading and we are busy, and I want you to keep reading. Bye.